In the flickering shadows of a small video store in Manhattan Beach, something revolutionary was quietly brewing. Two young film obsessives, Quentin Tarantino and Roger Avary, weren't just dreaming about Hollywood. They were plotting to disrupt it. And what emerged from that cramped corner of California would go on to tear through the industry like a lightning strike. But what most people don't know is that Pulp Fiction, the film that changed everything, nearly never saw the light of day. Behind the stylized violence and razor-sharp dialogue lies a buried secret. One scene so disturbing, so unnerving, that it was cut not just from the script, but from history. You were never supposed to know it existed. And yet, it all started with a forgotten script called Pandemonium Reigns. Back then, Avary and Tarantino would piece together scenes with literal tape and scraps of dialogue. Their creative madness had no map. Tarantino would eventually rework their chaotic ideas into what would become Pulp Fiction, weaving Avary's pawnshop horror into something unforgettable. But the relationship didn't survive the fame. After their shared Oscar win for Best Original Screenplay, Avary wandered off into his own cinematic wilderness. Tarantino surged ahead, untouchable. Fame had chosen one of them. And here's where it gets stranger. The film's title wasn't a modern invention. It was pulled from the gritty world of 1890s pulp magazines, printed on cheap wood pulp paper and sold for pennies. Fast, dirty, and relentless, those stories shaped America's hunger for crime and mystery. Tarantino didn't just borrow the name, he absorbed the spirit. But there's always a wall before the breakthrough. And in 1993, that wall looked impenetrable. Pulp Fiction was passed around like a bad joke. One executive even called it the worst script they'd ever read. The strange structure, the violent loops, characters dying and reappearing. It made no sense to the Hollywood suits. What they didn't understand was this: genius often arrives in disguise. The rejection cleared the path for Miramax, newly acquired by Disney and hungry for a hit. Harvey Weinstein saw past the chaos. He gave Tarantino full creative control and $8.5 million to make the film. It came in under budget. Why? Because they pulled a radical move. Every actor, from legends to unknowns, was paid the same rate per week. A move that put vision before ego. And nowhere was that clearer than in the casting of John Travolta. At the time, his career was circling the drain. From Grease heartthrob to sitcom punchline, Travolta was considered box office poison. Tarantino wanted him. Weinstein hated the idea. He pushed for Daniel Day-Lewis, Sean Penn, anyone but Travolta. But Tarantino held the line. Travolta agreed to work for just $140,000, a far cry from his usual millions. The risk paid off in gold. One Oscar nod later, Travolta was reborn, and Weinstein was forced to eat his words. Travolta's comeback? It became one of Hollywood's greatest reversals. It's a lesson still echoed today. Never bet against a fallen star with something to prove. And Samuel L. Jackson? He nearly lost his breakout role. Word got out that another actor, Paul Calderone, had almost snagged it. Furious, Jackson stormed into the audition with a greasy Big Kahuna burger and a fury to match. Someone even mistook him for Lawrence Fishburne. That only fueled his fire. He delivered a performance so raw, so electric, the room froze. The Jerry curl wig? A happy accident. It gave him an edge, that gritty NWA flavor Tarantino didn't even know he needed. Jackson wasn't acting. He was taking what was his. That role didn't just make him famous, it made him iconic. Then came the near miss that changed another life. Matt Dillon had the role of Butch Coolidge in his hands. He blinked, said he'd sleep on it, wanted to maybe try for Vincent instead. That hesitation opened the door. Bruce Willis, eager for a gritty comeback, walked through it. He didn't ask. He didn't negotiate. He just said yes. That quick instinct landed him one of the most intense roles of his career. And the pawn shop scene, its quiet dread, its visceral discomfort, burned into film history. Dylan watched from the sidelines while Willis carved his name deeper into Hollywood legend. Meanwhile, Uma Thurman almost walked away. She thought the script was grotesque, disgusting. But her agent saw the treasure buried in the grime. After a long conversation in her New York apartment with Tarantino, she changed her mind. And that was it. She became Mia Wallace. That iconic image, her laid-back, cigarette in hand, launched her into superstardom. But the part wasn't even written for her. The shortlist included Michelle Pfeiffer, Meg Ryan, even Madonna. It was fate, not planning, that placed Thurman at the center of a cultural storm. Michael Madsen, Lawrence Fishburne, both turned down roles that could have defined them. Fishburne thought the story glorified substance use. Madsen chose a Western instead. And for a brief moment, Tarantino even considered turning Jules and Vincent into two British gangsters played by Gary Oldman and Tim Roth. The casting process was chaos, but when the final pieces clicked, it felt destined. That's the wild heart of the movie business. Sometimes the wrong choices make room for the perfect ones. Then came Cannes. Midnight screenings are usually quiet affairs for niche audiences, but Pulp Fiction exploded onto the scene like a cinematic thunderclap. Weinstein flew the entire cast to France. Travolta, Thurman, Jackson, Willis, they were everywhere, chased by cameras, soaked in curiosity. The jury was divided, 4-4, 4 against. Clint Eastwood broke the tie. The Palme d'Or was awarded. A new era began. Tarantino wasn't just a director now, he was a movement. Back home, Miramax didn't let the heat fade. Instead of a slow indie rollout, they launched a full-blown spectacle. Lavish yacht parties, poster campaigns dominated by Uma Thurman's image. Private luncheons at Eden Rock. They even pressured TriStar, the studio that rejected them, to give up the distribution rights. And then came the real gamble. A wide release in over 1,300 theaters across America. No indie had done that before. Studios called it reckless. But by carefully timing their festival showings and building buzz, Miramax unleashed a tidal wave of curiosity. Opening weekend brought in $9.3 million. It barely edged out Stallone's The Specialist. But while The Specialist crashed, Pulp Fiction surged. The drop in week 2? Minimal. The chatter only grew. The film wasn't just watched. It was studied, dissected, quoted. It became a pop culture phenomenon. All on a modest $8 million budget, it raked in over $213 million worldwide. That return shocked the industry. It proved something crucial. Audiences were hungry for stories that didn't play by the rules. Stories that felt alive, raw, and unpredictable. And that brings us to one of the most overlooked financial revelations of this whole saga. While Travolta and Jackson saw career revivals, it was Tarantino who built an empire. He reinvested earnings into buying rights to his own films, acquiring a personal theater, the New Beverly Cinema, and amassing a collection of rare film prints. His luxury lifestyle is as unique as his directing style, more vintage collector than modern mogul. He owns a sleek Audi RS7, sports vintage Omega watches, and lives between a high-security compound in the Hollywood Hills and a lavish villa in Tel Aviv. He's also insured like royalty. Everything from production delays to career disruptions has been covered by multi-million-dollar policies. His financial strategy? Build legacy assets. Control your IP, own your brand. But let's not forget what else Tarantino buried beneath the surface. Scenes so bold they were cut before the light of day. One of them? The original Marvin scene, featuring a full prosthetic head, 5 gallons of fake gore, and a blast that would have made the MPAA see red. But that was the plan. Tarantino gave them something extreme, knowing they'd demand a cut. So when they axed the exploding head, they left the scene he really wanted untouched. A quiet manipulation with long-lasting impact. It's not just about getting around the rules, it's about mastering the game. And that brings us to Phil LaMarr. He was 27, playing Marvin for just a few minutes. But that brief appearance unlocked something huge. From voice work on Samurai Jack to Futurama, LaMarr turned a bit part into a voice-acting empire. Financially, that $5,000 Pulp Fiction gig was modest. But what followed was staggering. Over the years, his net worth ballooned to nearly $4 million, built off animation royalties, conventions, and enduring character deals. His lifestyle remains private, but insiders say he invested in property in Pasadena, one mid-century home, currently valued at $1.2 million, and a second modernist unit he rents out, yielding over $80,000 annually. LaMarr, soft-spoken and strategic, traded screen time for longevity, proving that one moment, when captured just right, can open doors for decades. But the spotlight didn't just glow on Marvin. Take Uma Thurman's Mia Wallace. Enigmatic, sharp, unpredictable. There was a deleted scene between her and Vincent Vega that changed everything. She pulls out a camcorder, starts probing, teasing, reading him like a book. The chemistry wasn't built on attraction. It was dominance versus cool detachment. One piercing line, "Are you an Elvis person or a Beatles person?" She already knew the answer. And that's why, later, her offhand comment, "An Elvis man should love this place," wasn't just a quip. It was a setup. She was always 2 steps ahead. That insight adds depth to a performance that earned Thurman an Oscar nomination and a permanent spot in pop culture. Speaking of pop culture, let's look at the luxury that surrounded Pulp Fiction's success. When the movie hit in 1994, it didn't just revive careers. It reshaped celebrity wealth. John Travolta, once struggling after a string of flops, suddenly saw his asking price shoot from $150,000 per film to over $10 million. He bought a $4.9 million home in Ocala, Florida, with its own runway and 2 private jets parked out back, a Boeing 707 and a Gulfstream II. His car collection? Rolls-Royce Phantom, classic Thunderbirds, and a 1960s Jaguar E-Type. He even wore a rare Patek Philippe Nautilus, valued today at nearly $300,000. And while his net worth once hovered at $5 million before Pulp Fiction, today it sits near $250 million. A resurrection powered by one perfectly timed comeback. Meanwhile, Quentin Tarantino himself built a real estate portfolio almost as layered as his films. With homes in Hollywood Hills, Tel Aviv, and a $10 million Mediterranean-style mansion in Beverly Hills, his empire reflects quiet taste over flash. No fleet of Lamborghinis, just a deep love for vintage cinema and a home theater outfitted with 70mm projectors. His financial growth? From indie directors scrapping by on under $30,000 per script to a net worth of $120 million today. And it's still rising. His recent deal with Sony included not just back-end profits, but equity stakes in streaming residuals. That's not just power. That's legacy planning. But sometimes, it's the stories we didn't see that tell us the most. Eric Stoltz's deleted 3-minute meltdown as Lance the drug dealer wasn't just funny. It was a mirror to Vincent's rage. Stoltz improvised most of it, unleashing a furious, foul-mouthed rant about being sent on a useless detour through Panorama City. It was electric. And then, cut. Why? Timing, rhythm, impact. Tarantino wanted to build chaos, then crush you with a sharp pivot into Mia's overdose scene. The idea was to soften you with humor, then slap you with fear. That edit, that loss of the scene, was another masterful misdirection. But those who saw the raw cut still call it one of Stoltz's finest moments on film. Now let's loop back to that mysterious briefcase. The soul theory, riveting. The diamond theory, surprisingly plausible. The Elvis suit theory, outlandish, and yet weirdly in character for Tarantino. But here's the question that still haunts audiences. Why do we care so much? Because that's what genius does. It doesn't tell you what to think. It makes you wonder. It leaves gaps for the mind to wander, to theorize, to own a piece of the story. And here's a curiosity you might not know. Tarantino's fixation with unexplained scars and symbols isn't limited to Pulp Fiction. In Inglourious Basterds, Aldo Rain's neck scar is never explained. Just like the briefcase, it invites speculation. It creates cult followings. And that builds something rare, cinematic immortality. Because once a movie becomes a mystery, it never dies. And neither do the careers built from it. Bruce Willis took a smaller paycheck for his role in Pulp Fiction, just $800,000, far below his usual $10 million fee at the time. But he knew. That role kept him relevant. It allowed him to pivot into quirky, independent projects while still maintaining blockbuster status. His total net worth today? Around $250 million, with over $60 million of it in real estate, including properties in Malibu, Idaho, and New York. His private collection of watches? Audemars Piguet, Rolex Submariner, and an ultra-rare IWC Big Pilot Top Gun edition. He didn't just buy into the film, he bought into the legacy. What fans didn't see in Pulp Fiction might be even more powerful than what they did. A harrowing backstory involving the masked character known as the Gimp was originally shot in detail. According to Tarantino, the character was once a hitchhiker, kidnapped, manipulated, and eventually broken into the eerie figure we see tied in the basement. The decision to remove that footage was intentional. Tarantino believed that the unknown would haunt viewers longer than any grotesque exposition could. And he was right. That ambiguity allowed audiences to imagine horrors far worse than anything on screen. But here's what stings. Tarantino confirmed that when Butch knocks the Gimp out, it's not just a knockout. The man dies, strangled by the very rope holding him. It wasn't redemption. It was a final blow delivered in the only moment hope had returned. That's the cruelty of subtlety. Esmeralda's cab ride with Butch, another deleted scene, offers a chilling glimpse into the soul of a film built on fragmented moments. In this extended conversation, Esmeralda, played by Angela Jones, tells Butch that his opponent Floyd died in the ring. But what hits harder is her philosophical take on death. She speaks of it not as an end but a crossing, linking it back to her own childhood loss. When she says, "Violence is the most honest thing humans do," the line lands like a quiet explosion. Butch listens. You protect your reputation. Bruce lived by that rule. He didn't flaunt excess. He fortified his legacy. And that strategy should speak volumes to anyone navigating uncertain futures, celebrity or not. Meanwhile, Tarantino has become less a director and more a mythmaker. He's not just crafting stories, he's crafting permanence. With only one film supposedly left before retirement, every decision he makes carries weight. Even the scenes that never aired carry echoes. Lance's monologue, the Gimp's tragic fate, the soul-bearing cab ride. These moments may never be seen, but they remind us of something crucial. And there you have it. Lost Pulp Fiction scenes, Bruce Willis's quiet empire, and Tarantino's wild ride through NFTs and near-mythic storytelling choices. From the Gimp's dark fate to Esmeralda's haunting truths, and Bruce flipping the Hollywood finance game, this wasn't just behind the scenes, it was behind the legend. If you loved this deep dive into the stuff you weren't supposed to see, go ahead and hit that like button. Drop a comment with your favorite deleted scene or wild Tarantino fact, and don't forget to subscribe. We've got more untold Hollywood stories coming your way. Next up, let's just say someone else made a deal with the devil, and the receipts are juicy. Until then, remember, in Hollywood, what you don't see might just be the most unforgettable part.